I will slideshow. Gender responsive budgets. What happened? Slideshow. Oh. Yeah, gender responsive budgets. So all of us, whether your economics, science, or whatever it is, so all of us talk about budgets. So when budget is coming means, everybody will be interested to know what it is going to be. Some expectations will be there, like increase in expenditure, because anything budget basically talks about uh, taxes and expenditure. Basically, it is about how to raise the taxes, where from 1 rupee is coming, and where we are going to spend, where it has been spent, and where we are going to spend. So budgets tell us about the income and expenditure of the government. So, and all of us do also budget in our own way, in our house or anything that you want to spend. So means, it is a futuristic thinking, like, so much money we will allocate for milk, and this is house rent and blah, blah, blah. So all that we will be allocating money depending on how much money we are getting. So basically, gender responsive budgets are also, there are also budgets. But here, the one more addition is these budgets are gender responsive budgets. Means they take into consideration, as what I told you, gender roles are there. So, and gender differences are there. So gender gaps are there. That is why actually I introduced all those concepts to you. So, and to attain gender equality, we need to have gender equity. So for all these things, we need money. See, it's not just government giving slogans. So, yes, okay, we want to attain gender equality. But how? There should be some way. And any policy will be followed by programs. See, policies are determined based on the government overall objective. For example, when Sarashiksha Abhiyana was introduced, the objective was to attain gender equality in school admission, school education. So every child should be in school. If there should be reduced gender equality in school education. So along with Sarashiksha Abhiyana, before Sarashiksha Abhiyana, Mahila Samakya program came about. So Mahila Samakya program sensitized women about the importance of girl child education. But when Sarashiksha Abhiyana came, the objective was to reduce the gender gap in school education. Means to attain gender parity in school education. Means, that is our objective. For that, government made a policy that every child should be educated, and we have, but policies on their own, they don't do anything. Policy will be only in paper, but that policy has to get operationalized. So to get operationalized, our objective is to attain gender equality. And our policy is to promote girl child education. But how are we going to do? So those policies, to translate that, we need programs. So then government will be deciding the programs. So what government observed is that girl children are not going to school at the high school level till they complete the they are not continuing the education because there are no schools. And pardon? We can't hear you.
Are you sharing slides?
Yeah, I shared actually.
It is not moving. That's why I asked you.
No, I didn't move. I just.
Okay. Okay, madam. Right.
Yeah. So I'm just giving generally about budgets, why gender budgets. So when policies come into existence, when government makes a policy, it has to be operationalized. So our objective is to attain gender equity in education. So we need programs, but how these programs? Based on the realities, ground realities. Ground realities is girls are not continuing beyond high school. They are not going behind beyond this high school. So then there was a research study understanding that why girls are not going, because there are no schools nearby. And once they get matured, they are not moving long distances. And parents are afraid of sending their schools. And there are no girls' toilets in schools. And there are no female teachers in school. So all these factors were observed. So then what government has done? Government has taken these things into consideration And more money has been allocated for construction of girls' toilets and appointment of lady teachers and starting of schools nearer to their habitats. So all these things have come about. But all these things, to do all these things, government needs money. The program needs money. So then under Sarsiksha Abhiyan, a lot of money has been pumped into school infrastructure has been developed. So, and next we also got this cycling, girl children were also provided cycle. So all these things, they just don't happen. We need money. So that money allocation comes through the budgets. So here the more money is allocated for girls because we want to attain the gender equality in education and enrollment, increasing the enrollment. So here the policy will be followed by what is called the programs, and for each program there should be sufficient allocations. So each budget, government, when they are making allocations, they will see what has been attained last year, when so much money is allocated, what happened, and then how much money is to be allocated. So this is the budget. So in gender budget, basically, they're not separate budgets, but looking at the budget, existing budget with gender lens. Gender lens is whether both men and women are getting benefited or not, whether the benefits are reaching both men and women, whether the allocations are gender sensitive or not, whether the women's requirements are taken care or not. So looking at that is gender budgeting. So one of the, actually it is a very, very important development in gender studies, and gender budgeting is a very, very important development of the 20th century. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೊತ್ತು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಯಾರು ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ರುಕ್ಸಾನಾ, please mute. Yeah. So one of the most important developments in the 20th century was the entry of women into, see, what we are observing is in 20th century, more and more women are entering into both economic and political activities. Even though the overall percentage is less, still you see more and more women are entering into the economic activities everywhere. And gender budgeting is a tool for the government to make sure that the budgets favor both men and women by allocation of resources that benefit men and women. See, as I told you, gender budgeting looks at the budgets with gender lens. So whether this allocation is helping men and women or not, equally or not. For example, taxes, because government budget means both revenue and expenditure. But in India, still it is in the expenditure part only we are looking at in gender budget. We are not looking at the tax part of it. But seriously, in real terms, when we are talking about gender budget, we should also look at how taxes are raised, how money is spent. But here, most of the time, we are looking at only the expenditure. We are not looking at the taxes. Okay, this expenditure, how this money is spent, where the allocations are taking place, whether they are able to take into consideration the gender differences, whether the resources allocation is benefiting both men and women or not. So to look at that, gender budgeting is a tool. So budgets operationalize public policy. See, our budgets generally, not gender budget alone, but generally overall budgets. Why we need budgets is budget is a tool. Budget is a tool to operationalize government policy. So government policy is to attain the gender equality. Fine. But how it happens? So through some mechanism. So budgets are the operate, because according to our policy objective, we'll prepare the programs. So they come into existence, they get operationalized only with allocations. So budgets operationalize the public policy, and the gender budgeting has come about based on these premises. First thing is budgets operationalize public policy. And second one is budgets impact men and women differently. This is an important statement. So budgets, we generally think that, oh, what is there in budget? So it affects both men and women equally. It is not. See, as I told you, when GST was introduced, and women had more burden than men because the higher amount of GST has been introduced on sanitary pads. So similarly, the products that are being used by women, if they are also charged along with other general taxes, so there will be more burden on women than men. So similarly, if what is called medicines, if there are specific medicines which women are using, like for example, gynec issues, if they are taxed more, so a burden will be more on women than men. If they are also taxed along with other products, so there will be more burden on women, and poor women will not be able to get benefit. So that means, budgets will help with affect men and women differently. If government spends more money on providing, if more money is allocated for transportation, let us assume that more money is allocated for more expenditure is allocated for transportation, local transportation. So when more local transportation is provided, women get more benefited. That budget is gender sensitive because women use public transportation more than men. Even in the poorest of the poor houses also nowadays, two-wheelers is very common. Even in villages also, you find lot of houses will be having two-wheeler. But mostly two-wheeler is only for men. Men only use the two-wheeler. Women take some public transportation or they go by work. So by government investing more money on public transportation, it is helping women because women generally use the public transportation system. And similarly, water, provision of water, drinking water. If government spends more money on provision of drinking water, it helps more women because generally women fetch water in villages than men. So it helps women. So similarly, if government imposes any restrictions on going to forest, it will be adversely affecting women because women go as gatherers of the twigs and branches for their firewood and other needs. So any government activity or any budget related activity, it will affect men and women differently. They don't have the same effect on men and women. So gender sensitive budgets, they take into consideration the gender differences. So, and the third one is budgets include revenue and expenditure. As I told you, when we are looking at budgets, we should look at both how money is raised, how money is spent. And in the process of raising money, whether men are affected, women are affected, or all are equally affected. So similarly, in the process spending money, whether men are benefited, women are benefited, or equally benefited. So looking at these things, only two things, raising money, spending money. So in public finance, we talk about taxes impose sacrifice on the part of individuals, whereas expenditure gives benefit to this. So our tax policy says that there should be minimum sacrifice in raising the money. So this minimum sacrifice because when you are paying tax every year, you are paying 1 lakh tax means it is sacrifice on our part. We pay 1 lakh from our salary to the exchequer. So that much money is not available for us. It would have been with us, but we used for anything else. So we are sacrificing that money to government. So that means the taxes impose sacrifice on the part of us. But this sacrifice should be equally distributed between men and women. It's not that only women should be paying more would be incurring more sacrifice or men. So that is one about the raising money and spending money. If government spends money, the money the government spends should be helping both men and women equally. It is not that only women should be benefited. It's not that only men should be benefited. It should be helping both men and women. So where the expenditure should go. So that determines whether men are getting benefited or women are getting benefited. So that is why in gender budgets, we look at the budgets. We look at the expenditure and income, how they are affecting men and women. So historically, gender budget, how it has come into existence in India, gender budgeting. So women's group, that time, 2000 budget speech of 2004 and 5. So then itself, Chidambaram in his speech, so he mentioned that women's group met me and urged me to consider gender budgeting. This means that the budget should be presented in a manner that the gender sensitivities of the budget process are clearly highlighted. So I will be able to implement that time 2005-6 Chidambaram promised that and later on it has been implemented. So here 2005-6, again he made in his budget speech, he mentioned that will be happy to know that I have included the budget document a separate statement highlighting the gender sensitivities of the budgetary allocations under 10 demands for grants. So each demand for grants, how much money is allocated and who are the beneficiaries of these allocations. So that has been, as I told you, in India still we are looking at only the expenditure part of budget, not tax part of the budget. So we don't know how much sacrifice is incurred by men and women in raising the taxes. We don't know. But in general budget, how much money is allocated for men and women? Benefits are coming to men and women. That only we are now looking at in the gender budget. So again, 2006-7, Chidambaram talks about, while into a concept, I made a statement highlighting the gender sensitiveness. And I have been able to enlarge this statement to include schemes. At least 30% of the allocation is targeted towards women. And I am covering 24. So here, from 10 demands, it has increased to 24 demands. Any budgets are being made, there will be demand from each department. So here the gender budgeting departments have increased from 10 to 24 by 2006 and 7. In 24 demands, I mean, from each department, there will be 2, 3, 4. So in 24 demands, at least 30% of the allocations are earmarked for women-related programs. So this is what in gender, in Indian context, so what is the gender budget, how it has been evolved. So gender budgeting, it is a strategy actually. So why gender budgeting has come into existence is as a strategy. As a strategy, the difference between strategy and planning. Planning is short-term, strategy is long-term. So but whereas gender budgeting, it came into existence as a strategy to ensure gender-sensitive resources. See, gender-sensitive resource allocation. I spoke about gender-sensitive policies. So here the gender budgeting is mainly to ensure gender-sensitive resource allocation and a tool for engendering macroeconomic policy. Macroeconomic policy is policies for the entire country, and central government make policies. Central budget is one among the tools. So to for gender sensitive resource allocation, and it is mainly gender budgeting, it is a tool for engendering the macroeconomic policy. See, means understanding making the macroeconomic policy with gender sensitivity. So gender budget is not a separate budget for women. It dissects the government budget to establish its gender differential impact. So basically in gender budget, it allocates, it analyzes the budget to see whether they are affecting men and women. It enables tracking and allocation resources for women empowerment. It is general budget analyzed or constructed from a gender perspective. As I told you, without gender perspective, without any gender sensitivity, gender budget, budgets are just simply they allocate money. But whereas in gender sensitive budgets and in a specific allocation, whether there is any funds to be needed. So looking at that, allocating money is gender sensitive budgeting. It involves analysis of actual government expenditure and revenue on women and girls in comparison to that of men and boys and in comparison to the need. So in gender budget, we look at both the taxes and also the, both revenue and expenditure, to how they are affecting men and women and how they are in comparison between men and women, and also in relation to need, whether all women's needs are met through these allocations or not. So that is what is called the gender budget. So gender budgeting is a process of using gender perspective by the policymakers. So gender perspective at all stages of the policy making. So it includes the use of gender lens. Gender lens means what? Actually, gender lens is also a concept which I have not included in the earlier session. So gender lens is like when you have like I have, my power is short, so I use glasses. So many of us use glasses because our sight is short. So that means we are using lenses to correct our vision. So we look at through our glasses, so we have a better vision. So similarly, gender lenses, you are wearing the lens where you go with understanding that there are differences between men and women. There are biological differences and social differences, cultural differences, and their consequences we know. So with that understanding of the lens, we will look at the things. That is what is called the gender lens. So you wear that lens and see the things. So then you will understand that there is a difference between men and women, and the allocations will affect men and women differently, because you already know that men and women are not equally located. So looking at the things with the gender perspective is nothing but gender lens. So for here, in gender budgeting, allocation and collection of resources. So formulation of legislation, policies, and everything will be with gender lens, and a corrective action to address gender disparities. So here the implementation, execution, monitoring, audit, and impact, all these programs will be done with gender lens. So why we are looking at with gender lens is corrective action to address gender disparities, because our objective is to reduce the gender disparities. So to attain the gender equality, or to reduce the gender disparities, or to address the gender disparities. So allocations, when we are making allocations, they should be looked at it with gender lens. So when you look at with gender lens, you understand whether the allocations are meeting the needs of women or not, meeting the needs of men or not. If they are not meeting the needs of men or women, so you make some mid correction. And again, allocations will be taking place. So that is what we do in gender budgeting. So corrective action to address the gender disparities. It is far from just reporting. Yes, gender budgeting is not just only information in the format provided in the gender budget statement. It uses the budget as one of the many entry points to correct gender gaps, but it is not limited to the budget statement. Rather, it is a continuum or an ongoing process of applying gender lens at all stages of policy making, before, during, and after the passage of budget. So gender budgeting just doesn't stop this year so much allocations. So it is a continuous process. So this year, these are the allocations. So many people got benefited, and out of this, so many men got benefited, so many women got benefited. And then whether next year we have to make some allocations, or we have to reduce the allocations, or we have to change the process. Whether there should be some corrections in the implementation process. So all that takes place in the process of gender budgeting. So it is a continuous process. It just doesn't stop with only allocation. Generally, gender budgeting involves 4 components. So what are these 4 components are? The budgetary allocation of resources to various heads, budget allocation. And second one is actual government outlays on various heads, and an accounting of how resources are utilized for a particular purpose. So that is an administrative overheads, wages, salaries, how it is spent, how much money is spent on wages, salaries, and operations, and all that thing. And the fourth one is an evaluation of the effectiveness of the resource utilized in the delivering of the intended results. So gender budgeting involves looking at all the 4 components from the point of women as beneficiaries. See, these stages are generally budget, not gender budget alone. Any budget process will have first budgetary allocations. How many crores are allocated for each head, done. After that, actual outlays. Allocation is done, but actual outlays may be different from allocations. So actually, how much money is been allocated, how much outlay has been made in particular head. And after that, then how much is utilized? How much is utilized for a particular purpose? Means how much is allocated for, how much is utilized rather for all these heads. Then after that, evaluation, whether these resources are utilized in delivering the results, like what has been targeted, whether that has been achieved or not. So all these 4 stages are there in any budget, But whereas in gender budgeting, all these things involve, in gender budgeting, looking at all the four components from the point of view of women as beneficiaries, whether women are included in the, whether money has gone into the heads where women are, for example, women and child welfare department. So in women and child welfare department, there are more schemes for women, exclusive women programs. So whether more money has gone into that or not, and how much money is actually spent there, and how it has been utilized. So whether program has got more or administration has got more, how much it is spent. And after all these things, who are the women? Women are also not homogeneous. All women are not one and the same. Women are not homogeneous. So women also, there are so many differences in the sense educated, uneducated, rural, urban, and rich, poor. So there are so many, there is so much of heterogeneity. So when allocation, when in gender budgeting, who are the women who got benefited, whether they got equal access or not. So all these things we will be looking at in the gender budget. Means all these stages are there in gender budget also, but all these stages will be seen with gender lens. Linking budgets to policies. See, as I told you, budgets operationalize the policy. So as I told you, policy is only paper. So it has to be operationalized. It has to be backed by money allocation. So linking budgets to policies, there are 3 steps. So in a gender budgeting, first thing is examine the position of women and men, boys and girls in each area of economic and social life, addressed by the budget, taking into account age, ethnic group, and location. So that is why databases become very, very important. Where women are actually, even India, actually we have better databases, but still we also don't have real databases. So that is how during COVID, we don't know where women are located, how many women are located, what is their status, what are they doing. Women are the worst sufferers of COVID, I tell you. COVID migration and what is called demonetization and all this, in all the policy decisions, women are the worst sufferers. Because being female, she is in unorganized sector, but we don't know to provide them security. We don't know how many are there. There is no count. There is no databases. And what are they? Where are they? Just we don't have any. So that is so first step is examine the position. Where are they located? What do they do? What do they earn? What are the security? See, you must be knowing Bangalore and all, there are so many export houses. What is called garments. So in all these garments, women are employed early morning, they go to work, but their working conditions are very, very poor. Very poor, they get meager income and there is no social security. So their working conditions are very bad. So we don't know, no government assistance to give also, we don't know whether there is any budget allocation. So linking the budget to policy, first thing is important is to look at where these women are located. And second one is examine the government policy adequately addresses these inequalities, which have been identified. First step is identifying where are the inequalities. Second step is whether the policy will address these inequalities or not. Then after that only resources come. After that, whether resources are being allocated or not. So there is no point in blindly allocating resources without knowing what is the ground reality. See, many places in India, it is happening like that. See, resources are being allocated like, for example, influence. In Mysore itself, I see roads, some roads are every year, every 6 months, again they are put. Because some MLA, some local politician is deciding there and he has got the muscle power, he will get it done. And other roads, 10 years, 20 years, nothing happens. So means it is waste of resources. I'm not talking about political issues here. Here the issue is, I'm purely talking as an economic student. See, resources are being utilized, getting wasted. Similarly, in the case of gender budget also, we need to look at where the resources are to be. See, for example, as I told you, women need support, extra support when children are young. So where are the supporting facilities? Where is the transportation to go to office? Even big offices also, there are no supporting services for women. Either you go to work or don't go to work. These are the only two options. So resources allocation needs to be based on the ground reality. So yeah, to link the budget to the policies, it is important to have where the women are located and how they are covered, and what policies are, whether the policies are existing policies are touching the inequalities or not, they are helping in reducing the inequalities. Then after that, whether money has been allocated to that or not. So all these things are to be taken care and linking the budgets. So why gender responsive budgets? What is the need for gender responsive budgets is, as I told you, why we need gender responsive budgets. Simply some budget, government gets so much money, spend money, that is okay. It is not, it should not be like that. We have a solid reason for going for gender budgeting, gender responsive budgeting. So gender responsive budgeting is because one thing is budgets are not gender neutral because there are differences between men and women in what? Where are the differences? One difference is employment and earnings. There is a vast gap in employment and earnings, and labor markets are highly segmented. Women are in low paid, insecure jobs. Men are in high paid and secure jobs. So, and earnings are also different. Women's earnings and men's earnings are different. So that is why gender budgets are important. Second one is receipts of welfare benefits. Even welfare benefits also, mainly they are focused on men, and men only get benefited, whereas welfare benefits, many a time, women do not even able to access those benefits. So that is the difference. And there are differences in incomes. There are differences in income. Men's earnings and women earnings are different. So for two reasons. One reason is men income, women income is different because of the educational differences. And second one is, many a time women forego the opportunities, even if they get highly paid for their qualification, they don't go because they have the family responsibilities. So because of that, even though they are capable of earning more money, they don't go because they have the family responsibilities. So income is less. So then use of public services. This already I mentioned to you. Public services are used more by women than men, as I told you. Obligation for unpaid care work. More women are more employed in unpaid care work within the household. So there is a lot of difference. If, for example, if taxes are increased, if service taxes are increased, it is women who suffer because we can't use the services. So similarly, if hospital charges are increased, if government hospital services are increased, it is women who have to feel the response, who will be suffering more because they don't get in time services, and they will have the burden of taking care of the sick in the house. So these are the differences, and gender characteristics of household determined. So all these factors are being determined by the household characteristics. What is the household? Whether women are the head of the household or man is the head of the household, whether both men and women both are earning or one fellow is earning. Only one fellow is earning, the differences are more. Both are earning, the gap is less. And gender relations within the household, whether within the family there is more gender equity or not, and distribution of paid and unpaid work. So more, whether women are involved in more unpaid work or paid work, and extent of women's financial autonomy, whether women have financial autonomy or not within the household, and who is the breadwinner. Women, men is the breadwinner and female are the carer. So if that is the situation also, in all these situations, there are differences between men and women. So that is why the goal of gender budgeting is to integrate these things in the fiscal and monetary policy. See, gender-oriented concerns, all these are gender-oriented concerns. So these gender-oriented concerns are to be incorporated in the fiscal policies and administration, and the gender budgeting is a tool to do that. Through gender budgeting, it is possible to integrate the gender-oriented concerns into the fiscal policies and administration. The interrelated goals of gender budgets. So these are the three interrelated goals of gender budget. One thing is, in a gender budget, all these three are interrelated. Not one goal, all three are there. One is raise awareness and understanding of gender issues and impact of budgets and policies. See, as Sir introduced me, I am also a consultant for Fiscal Policy Institute. So in Bangalore, it is in Kengeri area. So this Fiscal Policy Institute, they will be conducting training programs for auditors and budget makers, policy makers, to sensitize them, create awareness about the gender issues. So one of the goals of gender budgeting is to raise awareness and understanding of gender issues and impacts of budgets and policies. And the second goal is make governments accountable for their gender budgetary and policy commitments. See, government may give policy. Oh, we want to attain gender equity. But what is the allocation? What government is doing? How much money is spent in this? So that comes from the budget. So that way gender budgeting makes governments accountable for their gender budgetary and policy commitments. And third one is change and refine government budgets and policies to promote gender equality. So through gender budget, the government refines government budgets and policies for promoting gender equality. So all these are interrelated goals of gender budgeting. First one is create awareness, and second one is make governments accountable for gender equity, and third one is refine government budgets and policies to promote the gender equality. So all these are interrelated objectives of gender budgeting. And gender budgeting, how it started was, it's not too long ago. So developed in first time it was developed in Australia in 1980s, and Australia's landmark gender budgeting initiative in 1984 required government ministries and departments to analyze the impact of annual budget on men and women with a focus on public expenditure. So first time in Australia, they have done it. What they did was they analyzed the public expenditure, how the public expenditure affects men and women. They also did not focus on income part of it, revenue part of it. So they focus on how public expenditure, when government is spending money, how it affects how it affects men and women. So that was the first attempt to understand, to see the gender budgeting in Australia. In India, gender budgeting was first adopted at the union level, that is central level in India in 2000. After that, then the states also followed. Union initiative was institutionalized to the development of a system of classification of budgetary transactions. So from 2000 onwards, government is focusing on gender budgeting. So now actually this 57 ministries and departments, Government of India, list of 57 ministries and departments which have set up gender budget cells. So Government of India has established gender budget cells in all these departments, 57 departments. Department of Revenue also it is there, but not much work is going on. And gender budgeting and this one, state-wise. So Karnataka 2006-07 itself we have adopted gender budgeting, and recently this Maharashtra, Rajasthan and all came about recently. We are one of the early adopters of gender budgeting in India, and Karnataka is one among the early birds in adoption of gender budgeting. So Government of Karnataka has given the responsibility of preparing gender budget to the Fiscal Policy Institute. So every year they prepare the gender budget and submit it to the government. So gender budget will have a gender budget statement. The gender budget statement is a gender budget statement. First, it was introduced in 2005-6. It has, and they have announced the gender budget statement in 2005-6 itself. And what this statement says is, it captures the quantum of budget resources earmarked for women by various departments. So it is a statement. It's a budget statement. So in this budget statement, expenditures are given in 2005-6 budget, and how much money is earmarked for women by various departments. The gender budget statement is significant as it is the only source of verifiable quantitative information. The Manasa madam, please always put it in mute mode. You are creating some noise. So gender budget statement, it captures the quantum of, in a general budget statement, how much money is allocated, women only programs and women and men programs. So all that is given in the gender budget statement in 2005-6. So it reflects both schemes meant exclusively for women. In India, we have in gender budget, we have classifications. Part A of the GBS and Part B of the GBS. Under Part A of the gender budget statement, schemes where at least 30% of the benefits are earmarked for women. Say, for example, if 100 rupees are allocated, 30% is allocated for women. So those are the schemes where, minimum 30% is allocated for women. So they are grouped under Part A of the gender budget statement. And Part B of the gender budget statement, Part A entirely for women. Part A of the gender budget statement says that the programs were women-specific programs. So all 100% money is allocated for women. Whereas Part B is the list of programs where, at least 30% of the benefits are earmarked for women. Means in each scheme, 30% is allocated for women. So these two are presented in the gender budget statement. So when the gender budget statement was first introduced in Union Budget 5-6, it was called statement. From budget 6-7 to 16-7, it was called statement 20. From 6-7, they started calling it as gender budget statement 20. Since budget 17-18, it is called statement 13. This is only nomenclature. So GBS gets a lot of attention because it is included in the main budget, and gender budget is also tabled along with the budget. So budget circle of 2021. So 2021 mentions that the process of budget planning and preparation provides a critical opportunity to identify, prioritize, and address gender concerns in all ministries and departments and provide scope for making existence. So this is of course given in the gender budget statement of, gender budget circular of 2021. So every year ministries and departments, they prepare the gender budget. They will be requested through the annual budget circular. So every department gets one annual budget circular. So in this circular, they will mention that, they have to give the quantum of expenditure earmarked in the budget for women. So from them, they collect information, the budget preparation. Each ministry and department will be applying that information. And in the preparation of budget, they will be using this information. On the basis of the information they get it, the gender budget statement is prepared. So this statement includes, as I told you, 100% women programs, and Part B is 30% women-oriented programs. So in the sense, in the gender budget statement, one category of schemes are there, that is Part A. In Part A, you have the schemes where 100% money is allocated for women. And whereas in Part B, you have schemes where, minimum 30% of the money is allocated for women. So who are the stakeholders in the gender budgeting is Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ministry of Finance. All these people are involved in the gender budgeting statement. So in how the gender budgeting takes place is at the budget preparation stage. So ensure financial appropriations made in the budget match the needs, analyze the budget estimates for the current year, and revised estimates and actual expenditure of the previous, all this takes place. In the budget preparation stage, first stage, they look at what is the estimates, what was the revised estimates, what was the actual estimates so of the previous year, and they take all this into consideration before making the allocation for the current year. So, and post budget stage, after the budget is prepared, analyze sector wise and analyze the revenue side also, what are the sources of revenue. And at the budget implementation stage also, general budgeting analyzes, is the budget being spent in way it was intended, and what are the delivery costs, what are the subsidies. So this is all theoretically it is there, but in practically nothing is happening. So at the post implementation stage also, what are the outcomes, what is the impact of this budget, and whether it has helped women or not. Impact assessment of the program, how they met their objectives and purposes. So all this is supposed to be done with the gender budgeting. So gender budget statement of 2021. So this why I made this is it gives you an idea of what is gender budget statement. This is gender budget statement of 2021. So in this item is total budgetary allocations to women. So this has both, this is overall allocation, total budgetary allocation to women. How much, what is the 18-19 actuals and 19-20 budget estimates, revised estimates, and then 2021 budget estimates based on the revised estimates of 19-20, 2021 budget estimates are made. And then total budgetary allocation for pro-women schemes are Part A. As I told you, two categories of schemes, Part A and Part B. So Part A, 100% women-oriented schemes. This is Part A. All this amount is Part A. And this is Part B. Part B is all this amount. And together, total budget, Part A and Part B. This is the allocation, but actually expenditure is this. So gender budget, what percentage is going to women is given here. But overall budget, how much percentage is total expenditure on women is, budgetary expenditure is, it was 4.98, and 2021 it was estimated to be 4.72. So this kind of statement will give us where the money is going, whether women-oriented schemes or 30% women schemes, or what percentage it constitutes in the overall budget. All that information will be knowing in the gender budget statement. So ministries and departments reporting allocation of gender budget statement, Part A and only Part B and both. See, not all departments are reporting all the things. Well, some departments are reporting some things and Part A or Part B. See, for example, reporting only Part A. All these departments are reporting only Part A, means women only, programs only they are reporting. And here reporting in both Part A and Part B, both. Whereas here reporting only Part B, means 30% allocation, how much is made, only is given in these departments. So there are gaps, in the sense not all departments are actually providing the information for Part A and Part B schemes. So many departments, you see here Part B, many departments are giving only Part B, that is 30%. So Part A, few departments, Part A and B, both only few departments are giving. And yeah, gender ministries and departments did not report allocation at all. So many ministries, they did not report allocation. They have not reported any allocation. So that is a problem. It is not actually happening properly. So gendered impact of taxation. As I told you, not only expenditure affects men and women differently, and the tax also affects men and women differently. By because there are differences in paid and consumption expenditure, gender difference in property rights and asset ownership. So because of all these things, the taxation structure affects men and women differently. See, women work is mainly unpaid. 1 minute, I'll just bring some. Yeah, because of differences in consumption expenditure and differences in property rights and asset ownership. See, to some extent, actually, efforts are going on. For example, in some states, if property is registered in the name of female, there is, I think, some discount in the rate of registration, that is amount, registration amount. So some efforts are being made, but overall there are differences in all these things. Because of these things, there is difference. There are the budgets affect, when tax structure affect men and women differently. So performance of gender budgets, how gender budgets are performed over a period of time. So ever since we have introduced the gender budgeting, so as I told you, 100% women oriented, women specific schemes and total gender budget. Program